I noticed the moment my daughter-in-law handed me the serving dish that she wasn't going to say a word about what day it was. It was my 68th birthday. I had baked the cake myself. The dining room was full of their friends, people I'd met twice, maybe 3 times, who spoke loudly about things I didn't recognize and laughed at references I couldn't follow. My son had introduced me once, briefly, the way you introduce a piece of furniture you've had too long to notice anymore. "This is my mother. She lives with us." Then he turned back to his guests, and I carried the breadbasket into the kitchen and stood there for a moment, listening to the sound of my own house being enjoyed by people who didn't know whose house it was. I'd owned that home for 19 years. The mortgage was paid off with money I'd saved during 30 years of working as a hospital administrator. My husband and I bought it together, chose the floors together, painted the living room 3 times until we found the right shade of green. When he passed, I kept it because it was the only place left that still felt like him. My son moved in 7 years ago, after the divorce from his first wife, with a suitcase and a bruised expression that made my heart ache. I told him he could stay as long as he needed. I cooked for him, paid the utilities, kept the heat running through every winter. When he met my daughter-in-law 2 years later, she moved in quietly, and then not so quietly, rearranging my kitchen and replacing my curtains with ones she found at a boutique in the city. I paid for those too, without being asked. I thought it was what a mother did. The children came. First one, then another. My grandson was 11 now, and my granddaughter 7. I loved them in that helpless, consuming way that grandparents love, a love that doesn't ask anything back. I paid for their school supplies, their sports equipment, the music lessons my daughter-in-law signed them up for without mentioning the cost. Every year, I told myself the same quiet lie. This is temporary. They're just getting on their feet. But people don't get on their feet when the floor never gets taken away. That evening, as I refilled the water pitcher for the 4th time and wiped down the kitchen counter while laughter rolled in from the other room, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Not anger. Something quieter than that. The specific sadness of understanding that you have become invisible to the people you built your life around. My grandson appeared in the kitchen doorway around 8 o'clock. He was in his pajamas, having been sent to bed an hour earlier, but he stood there anyway, holding something small behind his back. He placed it on the counter in front of me. A grocery store cupcake with a single candle already lit, the little flame tilting in the draft from the hallway. His handwriting was on the wrapper in blue marker. "Happy birthday, Grandma. You are my favorite person." I pressed my hand flat against the counter so he wouldn't see it shake. "How did you know it was about to go out?" I managed. "I set a phone alarm," he said simply, as if that were the obvious thing to do. I blew out the candle. He hugged me around the waist the way he had when he was 4 years old and convinced the world was trying to get him. I held him tighter than I should have, tighter than the moment technically called for, and felt something fracture somewhere behind my ribs. Not from pain, from the terrible tenderness of being seen by someone when you had nearly convinced yourself you no longer existed. After he shuffled back to bed, I stood in the kitchen until the last guest had gone. I washed the dishes my daughter-in-law left soaking. I wiped the table she hadn't wiped. I turned off the lights in the dining room and the lamp in the hallway, the ones they always forgot, the ones that ran on my electric bill. Then I sat down at the kitchen table in the quiet dark and did not move for a long time. I am not a dramatic woman. I never have been. I come from people who solved problems with stillness and patience, who believed that outlasting difficulty was its own kind of strength. But sitting there that night, in a house I owned, in a life I had given away piece by piece without anyone asking, I understood something I could no longer unfeel. Patience had not made them grateful. It had made them comfortable. And there is a difference between a home and a hotel where you happen to also do the laundry. I didn't sleep much. I lay in bed listening to the sounds of the house settling, those particular creaks that I knew the way I knew my own breathing. The room my husband and I shared for 18 years. His side of the closet still had 2 of his shirts in it. I kept them there because I wasn't ready, and because no one had ever suggested I should be. Somewhere around 3 in the morning, I made a decision. Not a dramatic one, not born of anger, though I had every right to anger. It was the kind of decision that arrives when you've been thinking about something for years without admitting you've been thinking about it. Quiet, settled, already true before you speak it aloud. I rose early, dressed carefully, and drove to meet my real estate agent before she even opened her office. I had her number from years back when I'd considered downsizing, before my son moved in and made downsizing feel like abandonment. I called her from the car. She answered on the second ring, surprised to hear from me. "I'd like to list the house," I said. She paused only a moment. "When do you want to move forward?" "Today," I answered. She met me at a coffee shop near her office. She was efficient, warm, careful in the way of people who have delivered difficult news enough times to know how to hold space for it. She walked me through the process without asking questions I hadn't invited. When we were done, she rested her hands on the table and looked at me steadily. "Are you all right?" she asked. "This is a big step. I've been all right for a long time," I told her. "This is the first step I've taken for myself in years." She nodded once. "Understood." I drove home with the listing agreement signed in my folder on the passenger seat. The morning was clear and cold, the kind of winter day that sharpens everything at the edges. I felt clear too, in a way I hadn't for a long time. Not happy exactly, but honest. There is a specific relief in finally telling the truth, even if only to yourself. My son was in the kitchen when I came in, standing at the counter with his coffee and his phone, scrolling with the detached focus of someone who has made checking his phone into a form of meditation. He glanced up briefly. "You were out early." "Yes," I said. He nodded and went back to his phone. I set my bag down and put the kettle on. We stood in the same kitchen, in the same silence we had inhabited for years. And he didn't ask where I'd been. Didn't ask how I was. Didn't mention that the previous night had been my birthday. I counted to 10 inside my head, an old habit, and felt nothing shift. Some absences only become visible when someone decides to stop filling them. I had also, on the way home, stopped at my bank, the same branch where I had set up automatic transfers years ago, money that flowed each month into accounts that covered their groceries, their utilities, the subscription services my daughter-in-law had added to her profile, the car insurance on the vehicle registered in my name that only she drove. The banker who helped me was younger than my grandson's teachers, professional and unhurried. She walked me through each transfer without expression. "You're sure about all of these?" She confirmed before finalizing. "Every single one," I said. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with the same quiet precision as someone who understood that sometimes the most necessary decisions arrive without fanfare. By the time I got home, the transfers were canceled. The automatic payments were suspended. My name had been removed from the secondary account my son accessed, without telling me how much he used it, because he had never needed to tell me. It had simply always been there. Like me. The first call came before noon. My daughter-in-law's name lit up the screen. I let it ring. I was reading a book I'd been meaning to finish for 3 months, sitting in the armchair by the bedroom window, the one they had never tried to reupholster because it was in a room they rarely entered. The voicemail notification blinked. The second call, from my son, came 20 minutes later. I watched his name on the screen with the particular patience of a woman who has spent years being available at a moment's notice. I let it ring, too. By 2 o'clock, the messages had begun. My daughter-in-law first. "Something's wrong with the grocery card. It's being declined. Can you call the bank?" Then my son. "Mom, I got a notification that the utility account is under a different name now." Did something happen? Call me. I made lunch. A simple thing. Soup from leftover vegetables. The kind of meal I'd learned to enjoy when the people in my house started ordering delivery instead of eating what I cooked. The soup was good. The kitchen was quiet. Outside, a thin layer of snow had started to fall. The kind that doesn't stick, that just makes the world look briefly uncertain about itself. My grandson came home from school at 3:15. He set his backpack down by the door the way he always did, kicked off his shoes in the wrong direction, and wandered into the kitchen. He stopped when he saw me at the table with my tea. "You look different." "Do I?" He considered me with that particular seriousness that children have when they are deciding whether an adult can handle the truth. "Like you made a decision," he said. I smiled at him. I did. He sat down across from me and pulled a tangerine from the fruit bowl, peeling it slowly. "Is it about last night?" he asked without looking up. "The birthday thing. Partly," I said. "But mostly it's been building for a long time." He nodded as though he had suspected as much. He didn't ask what I'd done. He just sat there, peeling his tangerine, present in the uncomplicated way of someone who simply wanted to be in the same room with me. That meant more than he knew. "Are you going to be okay?" he asked finally. "Better than okay," I said. He separated a section of tangerine and pushed half across the table to me without comment. We sat together in the quiet, while the snow outside kept deciding not to stick. When my daughter-in-law came home an hour later, I heard her before I saw her. The garage door, the sharp click of her heels, the particular way she opened interior doors not rudely, just with the certainty of someone who has never had to wait to be let in. She appeared in the kitchen doorway in her coat, phone in her hand. "Helen," she said, which was what she called me when things were not social, just functional. She hadn't called me anything warmer in a long time. "Something's been going on with all the accounts today. The grocery card stopped working, the utilities showed a change, and my gym membership got canceled." She paused. "Do you know anything about that?" I set my teacup down carefully. "Yes," I said. "That was me." Her expression moved through several things quickly. Confusion first, then a flicker of something like disbelief, then the specific tightening of someone recalibrating what kind of conversation they are actually in. "Why would you do that?" "Because I've been paying for things I should have stopped paying for years ago," I said. I was calm, the way water is calm after something heavy has finally stopped being thrown into it. She stared at me. "But we have a routine. The bills are set up a certain way. You can't just—" "I can," I said. "It's my money." She opened her mouth, closed it. Her hand tightened around her phone. Then, in a different tone, lower, less practiced, "What is this actually about?" I thought for a moment about how to answer that honestly without cruelty. "It's about last night," I said, "and the night before that, and the year before that. It's about standing in my own kitchen on my birthday, washing dishes while my house was full of guests, and having my grandson be the only person who remembered what day it was." Something crossed her face, not quite guilt, closer to recognition, the look of someone who has known for a long time that a bill was coming and has been hoping it would arrive after they'd had more time to prepare. "You should have said something," she replied. Her default, responsible had it been spoken out loud earlier. I looked at her steadily. "I've been saying it for years," I answered. "Just not in words you were listening for." She didn't respond to that. She looked down at her phone instead, which was what she did when a conversation had stopped going the way she needed it to. Then she walked out of the kitchen. My son arrived home an hour later, earlier than usual. He came straight to find me, which was itself unusual enough to notice. Normally, he moved through the house at a slight distance from everyone in it, as though living here were something happening near him rather than to him. He sat down at the table across from me. He was still in his coat. "Mom," he started.
And
I want to understand what's
the
happening.
reason that
I
we have
told him
that
the
is
same things
because
I told his wife,
the different
not in the
sounds
same
do
words,
different
but the same
things.
truth.
And the first one is the
I
rumen,
watched his
which is
face
why they're
as I
called
spoke.
rumens,
He
because
was
they
43
ruminate.
years old and had his
And
father's jaw and his father's way of going
they
quiet
hold your
when
breath
something hit him
and hair,
harder than
well,
expected.
mostly just
When
your
I
breath.
finished, he was silent for a long
and
moment.
it
Then,
all goes into their
I didn't
stomach,
know you felt this way.
and
You didn't
it
ask,
sits there
I
and
said.
ferments
He rubbed
and
the back
whatever.
of his neck. That's not
And
fair. I'm
there
not a
are
mind reader.
bacteria in the
I'm not
gut
asking you to
that
read
eat
my
all of
mind,
this grass.
I said. I'm asking you to have noticed that I was a
And
person
then,
living alongside you.
The
Not a
bacteria
service,
release
not a resource,
stuff that
a person. He looked at the table. Outside, the non-snow had finally stopped. The sky had gone the color of old pewter, that flat winter gray that makes everything look like it's been copied from a photograph of itself. What about the house? He asked. I waited a beat before answering because that was the one that would land hardest. I've listed it. His head came up. I'm selling, I said. I'll give you 60 days. That should be enough time to make arrangements. He stared at me. The way he looked reminded me of a version of him I hadn't seen in years. Not the managed, corporate, perpetually unbothered version. The younger one. The one who used to call me from college when things went wrong. Not because he needed me to fix anything. Just because he needed someone to know. Mom, he said. And his voice cracked on that single syllable in a way that made my chest hurt.
They're very cute.
You can't just... I can, I said again, gently this time. It's my house. I've given 7 years of it, freely, and I'm glad I could. But I need it back now. He pressed his lips together.
I went to a farm.
I watched him process. This was what grief looked like on practical people, the jaw setting, the effort not to show it, the recognition that something is ending that they assumed was permanent. Is this because of her? He asked finally. It's because of all of us, I said, including me. I let things go too long without speaking. That's on me too. He stood up slowly, like a man carrying something he hadn't budgeted to carry. He started toward the door, then stopped. Last night, he said to the floor, I know. See, he didn't finish the sentence, but he knew, and knowing mattered, even if it was late. After he left the room, I sat for a long while with my hands around a cup that had gone cold. The house made its familiar sounds around me, the furnace kicking on, the upstairs floorboards shifting under someone's weight. These sounds I had learned to hear as home had become, without my noticing, the sounds of something borrowed. I thought of my husband. He had never been a man of speeches, but he had a way of saying important things while doing ordinary things, while painting a door, while raking leaves. He said once, standing in this very kitchen, washing his hands after dinner, "You only get one life, and most people spend it managing other people's comfort. Don't." I had not listened well enough to that. But I was listening now. My daughter called 3 days later. She lived in Portland, worked in healthcare management, called on birthdays and major holidays and sometimes in between when the guilt outweighed the busy. She had always been the one of my children who moved forward, which meant she also moved away from things, including me. I never blamed her. Forward was simply her direction. Mom, she said, when I picked up. I heard about the house. News travels, I said. She laughed, short and surprised. Yeah, it does when your brother calls me in full panic mode. She paused. Are you okay? I'm better than I've been in years. Another pause. Longer. I could hear her thinking through the phone, the way I used to hear her thinking when she was a teenager, doing homework at the kitchen table. I should have come home more, she said. That wasn't me saying it carelessly. It came from somewhere honest, a little painful. I told myself you were fine, that you had them there, that you weren't alone. I wasn't alone, I said. I was invisible. Those aren't the same thing. She was quiet for long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then, I know. I think I knew. and I let myself not know because
you
it
don't
was
want a
easier.
picture. You don't
We
want to
sat
see
in
this.
that truth together for a moment. There was
It's a
no
picture of
way
me
to undo it.
with my arm.
You did the right
up a
thing,
cow's
she
butt.
said.
Don't.
The house, the
Look,
accounts,
every veterinarian
all of
has
it.
to do it. Oh my god!
She is never going to appreciate what
but
you
the problem
do.
is I can't.
And
I can't show you the
she
video
stopped.
because the ear
He got
tag.
comfortable. People get comfortable when you
Baby,
never make the
baby's
floor
so
move.
cute.
I made the floor
Baby
move,
was-
I
it
said.
was-
She let out a breath that sounded like
It's
relief.
hard to show you.
Good.
Without showing
I'm
your tag,
glad.
but
Before we
the
hung
calf
up, she
was
said,
so fucking
I'm
cute.
coming out next month,
Don't show
just to see you.
Don't show the farm.
No agenda.
'Cause I'm
I
pretty
would
sure
like
it's
that
under
very
the
much,
thing,
I
so
told
I'm
her.
not-
When the
So,
call
actually, we're
ended,
allowed to take
I
photos,
stood
so
by
we're
the
allowed to
kitchen
post them.
window for a while, watching the
I'm not
winter
posting
light
them.
move across the backyard.
But look, you
The
can-
oak tree my
you can
husband
find-
planted when we first
you know
moved
what farm
in
I'm talking about.
had gone bare for
I'm
the
not gonna tell
season,
you what farm
its
I'm talking
branches
about.
holding empty space against the gray sky with a kind of dignity that
Also, I
old
think
things have when
enough
they've
will just
learned
don't
not
make
to
it
fight the
really
weather.
negative.
My grandson
It's a
found me
bitch.
there when
I
he
have a
came
lot of
downstairs
shit.
that afternoon.
A lot.
He didn't say anything at first, just stood beside me,
My cow's
looking
on
at the
Wednesday,
same
we have a
tree.
number for
Dad
demonstrative
told me,
purposes.
he
Yeah,
said,
that's fair.
about the house.
It's very
I
cool how
know.
the different species
He
have
turned to
different
look at me.
digestive systems.
Are you going somewhere good?
I mean,
I
they're
think
not
so,
really as different as like
I said.
a
A
different
smaller
cows
place,
versus,
just for me.
like
A place where I won't spend my
like
mornings
a
cleaning
dog,
up after everyone else's evenings. He nodded slowly,
Indian
taking that
Wesleyan
in.
Family Holsteins and only
You do,
2,000
I said.
Yorkshires and
He
Scandinavians.
shrugged,
Yorkshires
but
are
not
the majority.
dismissively.
Oh,
More
that's
like
cute.
someone embarrassed by a
They're very
compliment
cute,
they had
aren't they?
actually earned.
Cute.
Still,
So,
you should have more people seeing it. We watched the oak tree together
but
for
it's my
another
dog.
minute.
Bro,
Somewhere in the branches, a bird landed, tested the bark, and
gloves-
flew on,
the
looking
gloves
for
go
something
all the
more
way up
suitable.
here. Obviously my hair
Something that
sticking out of
fit.
the way.
I thought
Something
about
I have.
that.
And
My
it's kind of
son
like
came to find me the
plastic,
evening before the first
like
prospective
bodysuit,
buyers were
basically.
scheduled to walk through the house. I was
And
in the
then
study,
the glove goes all
going
the way
through
up to here.
papers, the long and methodical work of untangling a life from a place it had been woven into for nearly 2 decades. He stood in the doorway in a way that reminded me of his childhood,
Get back to,
hovering,
I need to do
neither
one more
in
session.
nor out.
One more
Can I come
selfie.
in? I set down the folder I was holding and gestured to the chair. He sat like a man who had practiced what he was going to say and then decided at the last moment to put it away and just say what he meant.
Figure out.
I'm sorry, he began. About your birthday and about everything. The way things have been. I've been aware of it. Somewhere.
Because
for a
it's
long
all video
time.
capture.
And I didn't let myself look
I think
directly
it
at
should
it
be like
because
local
looking
source.
directly at it meant admitting what I'd been doing, which is taking you for granted.
Media?
Not kindly,
Media, maybe.
not on purpose, but completely. I held the honesty in that for a moment before responding. I know you didn't mean harm, I said. That was always what made it harder. Cruelty I could push against, but being overlooked by someone who loves you has a different kind of ache. His eyes grew wet. He blinked it back. He was always his father's son, in that too proud for tears, but not proud enough to pretend they weren't there.
Is
I
it
don't
this
want to
one?
lose you, he said. Not the way we've been,
Absolutely not.
but
No,
actually you,
no, that's the bad
the
one.
way it used to be.
Is this
What
the
you're
good one?
describing, I said
Oh, yeah,
carefully,
this is the good one. We're
is
doing
starting over, on different terms. He nodded. Whatever terms, I mean it. Then learn to see me, I told him. Not as the person who solves things, just as your mother, a woman who has her own life and her own limits and her own need to be
Amazing.
treated with care.
Wow.
He nodded again,
Okay,
and I
got
believed him.
it.
Not
I
entirely,
can there we
not
go.
yet,
Amazing.
but enough.
Wow.
Change in grown
Great.
people comes in fractions. It arrives in the small,
figured it out.
honest moments first, before it builds into anything larger.
I mean,
This was a small, honest moment,
did the
and I
bone
decided to let it count.
cat-
After he left,
pregnant?
I went back to sorting through the
No.
papers,
Oh, no.
but I found I couldn't
No.
concentrate on them anymore. Instead, I walked slowly through the rooms of the house one more time,
Needed anything
touching
else.
things in the way I hadn't since my husband died.
I've
The
witnessed
painted
it,
door
though.
frames,
It's actually
the tiles in the
kind of
bathroom that we argued about and both ended up loving. The hallway where I had measured my children's heights in pencil marks that someone had painted over years ago without asking me
The one I think
first.
about the most is the
This
one-
house
I
had been
witnessed it
mine.
in
it had also become theirs in a way that stopped being generous and started being erasure. Sometimes a place has to be let go of before you can find out who you are without it. I paused by the window in the living room, the one that caught the late afternoon light in winter and threw a warm stripe across the wooden floor. The kind of thing you only notice when you're paying attention. I had stopped paying attention to my own life a long time ago. I had been too busy attending to everyone else's. But I was paying attention now. The morning I received the accepted offer on the house, the sky had that wide, clean quality that only appears in the weeks before spring, when winter isn't finished but the light has already decided to move on. I stood on the back porch with my coffee and felt the cold air on my face and thought of nothing in particular, which was itself a kind of luxury I had forgotten I was allowed. I had already found a small apartment across town, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with good light, a balcony where I intended to keep pots of herbs and read books that had been sitting on my nightstand for years. It wasn't large. It didn't need to be. It only needed to be mine. My grandson had visited twice since the news of the sale. He always came the same way. Knocked twice, waited, never let himself in, which was not something I had taught him, but which said everything about who he had decided to become. He helped me pack books without being asked. He carried boxes with the unself-conscious helpfulness of someone who simply noticed when something needed to be done. On his second visit, while we were wrapping glassware in newspaper, he said quietly, "I want you to know that I'm going to visit you at the new place. Like, actually visit. Not just when something's needed. I know you will," I told him. He smiled. That specific smile he had that made him look young and old at the same time. Everything was going to be different now. Not perfectly, not without grief. The distance from my son had not dissolved, but had changed in texture, become something that could be crossed with intention rather than just money. My daughter-in-law had stopped calling. I did not expect her to start again. There were some relationships that could not sustain honesty because they had been built entirely on the absence of it. I held no bitterness about that. Bitterness was just grief that hadn't figured out where to go yet. What I felt instead, standing in my almost empty kitchen on the last morning in that house, was something I could only describe as returned, like I had been somewhere far from myself for a very long time, and had quietly, without ceremony, found my way back. I survived the years of being peripheral to my own story. I survived the assumption that my life existed to cushion everyone else's. And now, in this early spring morning, with the house smelling of empty rooms and old wood, and the particular quiet of things no longer being asked of you, I stepped back into myself, not loudly, not bitterly, not with speeches or ultimatums, or the satisfaction of having made anyone feel small, just fully. My husband had a saying he returned to whenever life got complicated. He'd say it quietly, to no one in particular, while fixing something around the house. A person deserves to take up the space they actually occupy. I hadn't understood that fully until now. I locked the door for the last time and put the key in my pocket. The morning was cool and still and entirely mine, and I walked toward it.